Okay, so we'll say a little bit about solutions and processes. Solutions, that is the technology of the utility character. It sounds very theoretical and abstract. It means that when we do something, the functions can be performed by the product itself. It can be performed by a person. It could be performed by a mechanical or chemical system. So battery powers the house. It's a chemical electrical system. But I can also go there myself and crank on a generator. And then Kent is powering the house. Different solutions. And it could also, the functions sometimes occur, especially if it's related to information and information processing, like matching your preferences to options for a service like Spotify. Then it's performed by a programmed system. So it's a digital solution. So basically, a lot of human work is for consumer services. So if I need a haircut, nobody has invented a machine that gives me a haircut. I go to the hairdresser and they do it. And it's difficult to scale because it takes human labor. The combination of programs and electrical systems means that we have a digital service, right? And then we all know about mechanical products and services. So, which are the more expensive here? Which is the most expensive solution, roughly speaking? Human labor, yeah. Human work is very expensive. And which would be the cheapest in terms of how much output you get from the investment? Sorry?
The digital.
Digital ones, yes. There's a saying at Google, atoms are a drag. Don't do anything that involves atoms, right? If it needs to be a product that is shipped to a customer or something like that, you have to have manufacturing, you have to have storage, you have to have warranties, service, and so on. It's so much extra that comes with physical products. So it's just, that's a no. Don't do it. So Google, well, they have their own phones and earbuds and so on, but for a long time they just did focus on the operating system. And often there's a combination, of course, of these. And for digital products and services, you often want to create a platform. So you get a point in space and time available from everywhere in the world. And you aggregate a huge range of options there. And one of the main functions, for example, for Spotify or for a streaming service like Netflix, etc. Well, the main function is the video consumption or music. But very important function is the sorting. Because there is such an abundance. Let's say, I don't know how many songs Spotify have. I think there was 15 million at some point. It's impossible for me to sort and organize all that. So the favorites, the recommendations, the playlists, all that is very, very important. Otherwise, you can use this very well. And that is what you usually had when you went to the record store. There was a person there, usually with a little bit of beard, and they said, oh yeah, if you like that, you should try this one. This is new from this group. I was embedded in personal knowledge at the retail point. But if you can take over the playing and that part, the only thing left that they do in the store is taking the payment. You paid for the record and you take it. So if you put in a platform, go for the point where you connect to the user, because then you capture the revenues for the whole ecosystem behind you. It's a very, very powerful position. There's some exceptions. There's some platforms that we don't know about because I think it's one called Akamai or something like that. They are caching enormous amounts of data in the backbone internet, like these major cables and so on connecting countries. On this network, they have big servers that cache a lot. Like the Netflix videos you use, they're not streamed from the US. They're streamed from caches much more closer to you. So that's a platform, that service that is provided by a business-to-business actor. But many, many, many times especially when it's disruptive, it's connecting to the end user and connecting them further back in the value chain and taking the revenue collection function. So I started to model ecosystems by functions also, not only products and services. Another point here, solutions change. Often the function is stable over time. We still need to have the function, but solutions is what's shifting. We used to think that competitive advantage was built on having the right resources and knowledge and so on. And providing the best service based on those assets. But it doesn't work, because disruption is when someone do it with a completely different solution. And you don't have the competences and assets to do that new one. So the resource-based advantage becomes a resource-based disadvantage. Your resources are not relevant to compete if someone does it completely different way to service the needs. And that's what's disruption. So the resources that was the source of advantage in the first place become the reason why they cannot compete when someone does it, for example, at 1/10 of the cost. You can't do it. You can't throw everything out. And even if you throw everything out, you don't have any special competence to do the new thing anyway. You're starting from zero. It's really problematic. And that way you can predict if a new product or service is going to be disruptive. It's not going to be disruptive if it has an overlapping value network, if it uses the same resources and the same type of actors to build a business model. It's not going to be able to disrupt, because then the established players can respond and position themselves. Okay, so you need a new business model to disrupt an industry. And you can say that you need a new technology. That's not always true. But whenever a new technology is causing disruption, it's because it's doing a new business model. You cannot disrupt with the same business model, because then also the established players can also just buy those kinds of service or whatever. They can also put their stuff on the cloud. So the business model has to shift. So functions are stable over time. Better predictor, and we'll come back to that, better predictor of what will work in the future is to look where the function is going to be ending up. And we'll come back to that when we have the last lecture and we connect how to understand the future and connect it to the innovations that we are doing today. How will this function be performed in the future ecosystem? You can have a fairly good idea about that. I have a video that I used. Bill Gates, 1977, is working with Microsoft, and the reporter asks him about this. And to his surprise, he says, well, probably soon everybody's going to have a computer at home. That was what he could see, because he knew that this technology, the hardware is going to be cheaper over time. It's a natural law of technology. It always improves. It always gets cheaper. There's never a worse technology coming in. So that's one thing. You can predict the future. You can predict technology. And then back to that video, he said probably everyone is going to have a computer. And then he said probably the software will be more expensive than the hardware, which was also something that was unheard of. Such an idea. But it makes perfect sense. And he said probably we're going to have software stores in the future like we have record stores today. So all these are logical consequences of understanding where the hardware trend is going and the software trend. So processes is about activities, activity bundles or activity sets. And activities are performed by actors, and activities utilize assets that the actors are having. So there's a circle between these. So you can model a business model with based on activities, or you can start with actors, or you can start with the assets, etc., and draw up how it will work when you try to make this product or service. You have to connect these three. And if you're familiar with what's called the Osterwalder business model canvas, you can see that we have the key actors, key activities, and the key assets, although Osterwalder calls it resources and partners, but I changed it. That's what you have on the left side in the business model canvas. That produces the value proposition, which is essentially the utility carrier, the price, and the services around it that we have been talking about so far. So when we talk about business model, we go back and start with activities and build it up.